Connectivity is a critical service. It's a foundational need to actively participate in the economy and in society. However, rural communities in British Columbia and across Canada continue to face connectivity challenges. Rural communities are increasingly playing active roles in improving local connectivity using a variety of approaches or models. However, there's no clear list of the types of these rural community approaches that exist, nor is there any framework for their evaluation. And so as a result, there's little research that demonstrates what enables different models to be successful or to help communities decide and understand what might work best for them. The goal of this research project was to identify, understand, and evaluate existing models of community-led approaches to connectivity in rural BC. As part of this project, we conducted a desktop-level analysis to identify existing models. We also developed an evaluation process and applied that process to 2 existing case studies. This presentation summarizes our findings, starting with the results of our 2 case study evaluations, and then discussing the overarching models.
So the first case study that we looked into is Citywise. So Citywise is a municipally owned company by the city of Prince Rupert, which is along the coast of BC, as you can see on the map provided on the site. So Citywise has a mandate to serve the public, and they operate like a social enterprise where their aim is not to earn profits, but instead to actually serve the public and their needs. So it was a company that started off in 1910, and it was run by the municipality up until 2005, where they spun off into a separate organization known as Citywise, and they have their own management now running the company. So initially they started off in Prince Rupert, but since then they have branched out into several communities across BC, including Port Edward, Smithers, Terrace, Hazelton, Houston, and Metlaka. And as we speak, they continue expanding into several other communities across BC. Being a telecommunications company, they offer several services such as phone, cable, and internet services. So the impact of Citywise across the communities that they've served has been hugely positive. So the first thing is that they provide high-speed internet at affordable prices. So they have plans starting off at 20 megabits, and it goes right up onto 100 megabits. And it's also satisfying all the CRTC standards that are in place. Citywise places a huge emphasis on customer service. The telecommunications industry is notoriously known for having poor customer service, but Citywise ensures that there's always somebody to answer the phone to handle customer inquiries. And if there's any major issue, they make sure that there's somebody on site within a few hours to rectify the problems. Another interesting thing that they do on their take with connectivity is revenue sharing agreements. So they have these agreements with the communities they serve, where they share a percentage, a proportion of the revenues they generate from their operations with the community, so that they can invest these funds or revenues that they earn into their own communities. The next positive impact that they've had on the communities is employment opportunities. Citywise is a company that continues growing and expanding into several communities, and they try to make sure that they hire people from within these communities to serve and conduct these operations that they do within these communities. Aside from their working and their operations, they also have an impact on the communities in terms of donations. So they donate their money towards community events such as cancer walks to raise social awareness. Another interesting thing that they do is that they sponsor scholarships and bursaries for students. So basically they sponsor students to go to college, and once they graduate with their technical certificate or diploma, they try and hire these students from within the community. So that also builds upon the point that I mentioned earlier on employment opportunities. So what makes Citywise so successful? So the first thing is that they have several years of experience. They've been doing this since 1910. So they have over 100 years of experience doing this sort of work. So they're well versed in the whole connectivity landscape and offering solutions to different communities. Another important thing is that since they're a technological company and they need to provide essentially different kinds of broadband solutions to different communities, you require key personnel and technical expertise. The people that work at Citywise and with Citywise, they possess the necessary skills and knowledge to conduct the operations. The next thing is that it's a very capital intensive industry and you require a large amounts of funds to conduct these operations. So this is hugely met through the grants offered through provincial and federal governments. So Citywise is using these funds offered by the governments to partner with communities and work with them. And last but not least, they also try to build strong relationships with the community and its members. They have a mandate to serve the public, so they are keenly interested in meeting different community needs as opposed to simply making profits off of them. I'm now going to let McKenna talk about Caslow Infonet Society.
So the second case study that we investigated was the Caslow Infonet Society. They're a nonprofit organization that was formed back in 1996 to build a community access network for Caslow and its neighboring communities in the West Kootenay region of southeastern BC. These communities that they served were deemed too small or insignificant in the eyes of the larger telecom companies for them to develop service and infrastructure here. And so KIN was born to and has evolved to fill this service vacancy and deliver the services that their communities need and deserve. Some of the services that they're providing include wireless and fiber-based internet services, as well as VoIP services, pardon me. The impact that Caslow Infonet Society has had on their community has been substantial. KIN is outperforming big telecom companies with quality of service and at a lower cost to their subscribers. Their internet service either meets or exceeds the CRTC standards of the 5010, and their service is also symmetrical, so identical upload and download speeds, neither one suffering at the hands of the other. KIN, as I mentioned, prides itself on providing excellent customer service, and as a nonprofit, they're focused on community investment in both terms of financial and human capital. They provide technical training to their employees and to their laborers and community members that are all part of this society, and they're placing their profits back into the local economy. Last year, they reinvested over $400,000 into their local economy, which is significant, especially for a community as small as Caslow. From its inception to COVID, KIN has stepped up and advocated for their communities as true rural connectivity champions, without being asked or prompted or encouraged in any way. They doubled, tripled, and even sometimes quadrupled the bandwidth that they were providing to their subscribers in order to meet the modern demands that COVID had presented in these communities at no additional cost to their subscribers. The four key factors leading to KIN's success are experience, leadership, funding, and focus. As a society, KIN has 25 years of experience and was founded and operated by incredibly driven, compassionate, and experienced individuals who, in addition to founding the company, contributed significantly to their startup capital before they were able to secure the partnerships and the grant funding that allows them to operate today. As I mentioned, they employ and train local staff, and they forge strong relationships within the communities in which they operate. And this community mindedness and rural pride has allowed KIN to become the successful organization that it is today. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Ashleigh for the broader model discussion.
So we've heard from McKenna and Ishith about two different models of creating community connectivity projects. And when we talk about models in terms of this project, What do we mean? Well, we mean about taking the information that we hear in these detailed case studies and turning them into something that's more aggregated, abstracted, or generalized, so that other communities can take the lessons learned from places like Caslow or Citywise and translate them into things that work in their own contexts. Why do we need these models? Well, for the most part, connectivity information at the community level in terms of communities that have been successful in building their own infrastructure and service delivery products tends to be codified in individual or unique relationships that people are only keeping to themselves and sharing just when people ask, rather than things that are broadly available and easily accessible and digestible by other communities. So it's really important that we start consolidating this information into models or into frameworks that other communities and other levels of government can use to both develop, evaluate, and form a long-lasting approach to building a critical connectivity infrastructure and service delivery. Moving beyond this sort of anecdotal information and storytelling into more tangible, action-based decision-making frameworks is critical for supporting both policy development and evaluation, and ensuring that our decision makers have all the information they need to start moving that needle forward on actually connecting rural Canada. As we're digging into these models, what we found is that at the community scale, there are really three different kinds of models of building community connectivity projects. One includes just straight infrastructure building, where we may be putting in wireless towers or building fiber optic infrastructure. The second model that we're looking at includes service delivery, which may be just delivering service like a utility or procuring services from other telecommunications companies in order to get services to contracted sites within the community. And we're seeing that through aggregated demand and better negotiation rates in terms of collecting that demand and making sure that we're not having to negotiate on an individual basis. The third model is really around this hybrid, where we may be functioning as a full utility, both building infrastructure, delivering services, and managing that on a long-term scale. Now, this is all at the local scale. So if we move it upwards, we're also putting this into the context of how provincial and the federal governments are approaching building rural connectivity across Canada, which runs the range from, again, service delivery, infrastructure building, public-private partnerships, private deferral, so in terms of just channeling money to private corporations, and a various other layers in terms of models around how we want to build this infrastructure. As we're moving forward into developing this sort of inventory of what these models look like beyond these two case studies that we've looked at in BC, we can start to approach things like the SWIFT project in Ontario, EORN, what's happening in Hamiota, what's happened in Olds, and look also internationally to look at what rural communities are building in these contexts of their jurisdictional places to create community connectivity projects and interlink those to broader jurisdictional, regional, national, provincial frameworks in terms of how we actually get everybody connected. In terms of what's next, we do want to move into expanding our case models to include more of that so that we end up with a broad variety of frameworks that decision makers can look at and judge based on where they're at, or look for key markers around what they know is likely to work in their local community context. Being able to turn this into sort of a decision tree or logic model process that helps decision makers and policy analysts, as well as funders, private companies, and nonprofits in the region figure out what they have on hand in terms of local assets, how they leverage those to fill gaps and move forward to build the infrastructure they need, turns this kind of case study research into something actionable, tangible, and meaningful for local communities, as well as for our provincial and federal policymakers. Of course, as well as any sort of applied research goes, the next plan is to test and iterate these models. So to see where they do bear out, not only beyond Caslow and Citywise in British Columbia, but across Canada, as well as looking at how they play into the global sort of context in terms of what other rural communities around the world are trying to do in order to build critical connectivity infrastructure. So this is the start of a really exciting process that, quite frankly, no one else is doing in terms of codifying this information into one space. So it's been really exciting to work with McKenna and Ishith, with Caslow and Citywise and Sarah, and putting this together into something that will actually help both rural communities and other levels of government make the next generation of connectivity infrastructure work for rural Canada.
So thank you very much for attending our presentation today. All of the resources from this project are publicly available, and if you'd like a copy or to discuss further, you can please connect with me. We very much want to thank our partner Citywise and our funder MyTax, as well as all the people who volunteered their time to participate in this work. And we look forward to taking questions and discussions during that portion of this of the conference. Thank you very much.